Collaboration Conversations. I'm your host, Regina Partain Bergman. Every time we do this show, I have the opportunity to interview some amazing people, and I typically have a guest co-host, and they invite some panelists to join us for a wonderful conversation and discussion about collaboration. But today we're doing something a little bit different. I work with some amazing people around the world. I say work with. I've had the opportunity to meet and support in one way or another amazing people around the world. And today I've brought four of those people in to share with you about what they're working on, where they are, and how they're making a difference in the world and what support they could use. Because let's face it, we can all use a little help in one way or another, right? So I want you to listen with your hearts today to the messages that these gentlemen have to share with you. I have two of them in the room with me at the moment. We're expecting two more. Hopefully they'll be able to join us. And we're traveling the world today. We're not just here in the States, we're traveling the world. And so they're going to tell you where they're from and a little bit more about what they're doing. So I'm going to start with Nambaale, who is from Uganda. And Nambaale and I have been working together for a little while on a project that he has. And I'm just so humbled that he would reach out to me to help with this project because of the significance of the work that he is doing. So I'm going to have him introduce himself, and then he will be followed by Tim Hargrove, who's been doing charitable work for many years in multiple ways as well. And we'll hear all about what Tim is doing. So Nambaale, would you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your journey, what you've done to get where you are, who you serve and why that's important to you to serve them.
Good morning there. I'm Denis Nambaale. As I've been introduced by the moderator, I'm from Uganda and running a charitable organization that is Dependable Youth Initiative Uganda. And a consulting firm that is the No Business and Project Consultants. In simple terms, I'm a humanitarian and a consultant for projects and business. Academically, my academic background, I hold a bachelor's degree in business management and a candidate for master's project planning and management. So I grew up in a poor community where the majority are illiterates and peasants, in the way that most of them they are peasant farmers. So girls and boys give birth at young age. Boys abandon their responsibilities after making girls pregnant and leaving them suffer. Poverty is the order of the day where a few can afford 2 meals a day. Taking children to school is a problem. These factors are the ones that made me engage community members to see that we can make a change in the community through different empowerment projects for the youth, both boys and girls, and other mothers. So we saw the empowering only one gender has more harm than good. So we decided to empower both genders. So that's why we came up with the initiative that is Dependable Youth Initiative to empower community to have sustainable livelihood. Thank you.
Awesome, Nambaale. And you have shared with me along the way some pictures of children playing and things, and and they're very definitely a need for support there. No shoes, little clothing, as you mentioned, the schooling is an issue, particularly for girls, and the girls and women have a really difficult life. And you are doing amazing work trying to change that. And that's so important. You mentioned also that, a good day is when they get 2 meals in a day, right? How many of us?
Yeah, it is very difficult to get.
Yeah. How many of us around the world would take for granted that we get a minimum of 3 meals a day, and typically have snacks available and things of that nature. And that, to think about 2 meals a day being a good day, that's, it really, to me, helps enlighten us about the condition over there. Yeah. Thank you, Nambaale. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Tim, would you share with us a bit about your journey, who you serve, and why it's important to you to serve them?
Yes, thank you. It's an honor to be here today with both of you and to hear about the work that you're doing, Nambaale. I grew up in Roswell, New Mexico, and yes, that's the area where the UFOs supposedly um, landed, and so we'll see. But I grew up in a small town in New Mexico. I was born with a bone disease called osteogenesis imperfecta, which caused me to have over between 40 and 50 fractures by the time I was 13. And I spent the first 16 years of my life in a wheelchair. And so never thought I would ever be able to walk, to be honest with you. And so God had other plans for my life with that, but I got out of the wheelchair, eventually began to be able to walk, and then I just had a sense that there was a purpose for my life, which is really, when you grow up in a wheelchair, you don't grow up thinking that your life has a purpose. You're just trying to survive. And so growing up in those conditions obviously had a pretty big effect on my worldview and how I experienced life at a young age. And so my parents are both very amazing people who really wanted to make a difference in other people's lives, and that kind of passed on to me as well. Again, I didn't think that was really possible for me because of my circumstance. And so eventually I went to college in Los Angeles, and I became a pastor and worked in nonprofit work. I still do, but I worked in nonprofit work through church-based work, and then it just began to spread from there to other work that we were doing. And I began to go to Mexico, or I would go to Africa, or I would go to Guatemala or Panama, Indonesia, places where I got to, you experience the common denominator is a really high poverty level. And so that began to really just stir my heart. And so through our church-based work, I lived out of the country for 6 years in British Columbia, but also traveled to different parts of the world doing projects. And eventually, a friend of mine that I'd worked with named Dr. John Morgan started a nonprofit called People Prosper International. And it's a organization designed to help bring economic empowerment, the principles of economic empowerment, to other parts of the world. And our first place that we really became heavily involved was in Kenya. And so most of our work is there. Most of our results have been there. And wherever you go, the vision for change is always greater than the bank account, right? So big vision, small bank account, and it creates a problem. And so there needs to be funding and capital and different kinds of outside support, but we really became burdened to help create a means for people to find a way to experience economic empowerment from within their own country. And so in the last 30 years, over 1 billion people have risen out of extreme poverty. And they really did not do that through charity. They did that through empowerment. So charity is a great, incredible work of compassion, and I do it. And but empowerment takes another step further, and it's really empowerment that has the chance to solve poverty. And so when we begin to work, and I heard Nambaale use the word empowerment. Empowerment involves many things like education and business development And sometimes it means laws have to be changed. People have to be given access to the marketplace. People need to be given a level of freedom to be able to work, to develop businesses. And so in the work that we do through People Prosper International, our core 3 principles are to help people learn how to create the best value that they can, own the best property that they can, and also to grow the best business that they can. So our Kenyans named our program Create, Own, Grow. And that's what made sense. I'm like, well, that's a pretty good name. And that's really the work we do. How do you go into an area and begin first is to plant those seeds, cast vision, and plant the seeds of economic empowerment through creating value, through property ownership, and through business development. And when we begin to work in those 3 areas, in really difficult situations, we began to see people take steps that were shocking to us, to be honest, right? Regina, we do work, hoping for an outcome, and then we actually get an outcome, and we're a little bit shocked. Yeah. And one of our first men that really took it seriously was a man named George Kaniga, and he had a little garden in his backyard, and he was just trying to grow enough food to feed his family. And over a period of a few years, he began to really learn and grow. And next thing we know, we show up and he's got tractors. And we're like, well, do you need tractors for the garden in your backyard? And the answer is no. But he did need them for his farming business. And so he went from growing food just for himself to figuring out how to start a farming business and getting some equipment. And I believe he grows sugar cane. And so that's a great product in Kenya. And so that began to develop. And then he said, our community doesn't have a school. And so we're like, well, what would it take for you to start a school there? And he wants to start a school that's focused on economic empowerment. And so these principles are incorporated into their curriculum of their school.
Awesome.
Yeah. And they got this, it's called Golden Gate Academy, and they have about 400 students. And of course, people have to pay to bring their kids, but they have to have scholarships for many kids. And they end up raising some of the kids, actually finding homes for them in their village and having them really be raised in the community. So this really strong sense of community, happens, which other parts of the world are so much better at it than we are in America. So they have this community, but he started with a business that he could understand. And we always say, start where you are with what you have. And that's what George did. And then the school was a little more, that was new territory, but eventually got that going. And then they actually have a medical clinic now in their community as well. And they're all ran as a business. And they all really have a really high level of sustainability by creating a model that's self-supporting from the beginning. And so that's been our challenge, is to come in and say, how do we do that? Because that's not a common model. And it doesn't mean that there can't be outside support. And of course, we welcome all levels of funding. And most of that funding comes from businesses in the U.S. as far as PPI's direct work is concerned. But our goal is to help people get established in their community, thinking about what's needed to be created in the community that creates value that could turn into business development.
That's fantastic. There's so much in what you both said, so much to unpack here. I wish we had like 2 or 3 hours instead of 1. I love that you both are talking empowerment. Change, that's changing from within, isn't it?
Yes.
It's instead of somebody coming and changing you, you're changing from within when you are empowered to do that. And also in something you talked about, Tim, what you went through the first 16 years of your life and who you were mentally, who you felt like you were, and that during that period of time has to really impact the work that you do and your ability to relate to the people that you serve.
Oh yeah.
Because like when Nambal talks about the young girls in Uganda and how um, they really don't have a future. When you were in that wheelchair and had all of those fractures and other things that you had to deal with, you didn't feel you had a future, did you?
No, you feel the limiting belief area really kicks in. So did I have a scarcity mindset? Yes. Did I have insecurity? Yes. Did I feel powerless to change my situation? Yes. And
Yeah.
I felt all of those things. And there was a level of truth to each one. Um,
Right.
but it
Yes.
wasn't the final out decision, right? It wasn't the
Right.
final step. And so, yes,
Yes.
when you're in these situations, um, I guess my number one, of course, insecurity affects all of us, but I just felt a really high level of how could I possibly ever have a purpose, or do anything that mattered.
Right.
And the other thing, that powerlessness really comes down to just feeling like there was nothing I could do to change my situation. And so that became a pretty big hurdle for me to overcome, and
Yeah.
I couldn't overcome it alone.
Right.
Um, you
Good
know,
point.
yeah, I don't think we overcome it by ourselves. I certainly did not. I had to have really good people in my life, and I had to have some new ways of thinking in my life. Somewhere along the way, somebody said, "Change your thinking, change your life." And and of course, I'm a Christian, so I have a faith element in my life, and that had a really big impact on the way I think. And but also from there, you have to go into how are you going to implement that right in real life.
Yeah.
What practical steps do I need to take uh,
Right.
to go forward?
So Nambal, would you say that especially those young women and young girls and the women in the community that you serve are experiencing very similar thoughts and reactions to their situation as Tim did uh, when he was younger and in that wheelchair? That feeling of futility and lack of hope and lack of purpose. And can you talk to us a little bit about what those girls are experiencing?
Actually, these girls, they are experiencing actually that they are isolated. Once a girl gets pregnant when he's still very young, is get isolated in the community, and it seems that he does not have a future ahead. So it makes them feel actually some of them they tend to commit suicide, uh,
Mm,
because they see that they have no future. The boys or men that made them pregnant, they abandon them. So for them, most of them, they try to do abortion. Now during that process of abortion, in Africa or here in Uganda, most of them, they use local herbs, local herbs to abort. So those traditional herbs, they are harmful to the health, and now they are implicating them to lose lives. So
mm,
actually, in our communities, when let me say that the girl has been going to school, and he get tempted with the elder men and makes her pregnant. Her parents cannot take her back to school. Actually, that becomes the end of her future. So
mm.
she either go to marriage or stays and do actually other work, community work, like actually serving food in the small, those very local restaurants, and actually she ends up having no skill. She ends up having nothing to base on, actually to secure her future. So that is the challenge here among for those girls.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, with both of what you're saying, it just leaves me emotional and speechless. um, I did not expect folks to have this reaction this morning. um, so forgive me. The work that you are both doing is so incredibly important. You mentioned faith, Tim. We are all God's children, each one of us, and each one of us has that spark of the divine in us. Each one of us is priceless, and yet we are treated oftentimes as though we are worthless. And to be able to help someone, like you were talking about, Tim, of the results that you've seen through this empowerment program, to be able to help people to see their worth and to step into who they are and to have a future that they have some control over is just, I think it's some of the most important work being done on the planet.
Yes. Those reactions, Regina, I mean, don't apologize. We've all shed a lot of tears, and I'm sure Nabal has as well. We shed tears because we see so much suffering. And what really drew me into this kind of work was the suffering of people, and just being frustrated, that not feeling like I was doing anything. Again, it's easy to look at the global situation of poverty, and then from poverty, we have all these other problems, right, that develop,
Right.
and all this mistreatment of people and the mistreatment of young girls. I have 3 daughters. They're all 3 are adopted, and were all adopted out of difficult situations. And you know, I do believe we can make a difference, but it's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. But we go in and invest in people, and we do that. I'm compelled by the love of Christ to care about human suffering, and I have suffered physically, and it wasn't a small amount of suffering, but it's nothing like what most people are having to experience. But it did expose me, at least to it a little bit, to know that it's not okay. And so it's not okay for me to go to different countries. I've worked in 7 countries to date, and it's not okay for me to be there and do work and just kind of ignore what's really happening in their situations. I don't feel that that's okay. At least it's not okay for me. And
Right.
so I want to be that person who does what I can. And is it enough? I never feel like the work I'm doing is adequate to the situation,
Yeah.
but we can allow that to cause us to make excuses. And because I can't resolve all the issues of the problem, I can't personally make the problem go away. We use that as an excuse to not do anything. And I believe in that starfish story where you pick up the starfish, and you throw it back in the ocean, and you say, "Hey, well, I can't help them all, but I can help one."
Yeah.
And our one has actually turned into hundreds that have been helped through People Prosper International. And I do believe in the work of education and empowerment and encouragement. And when you put those things together, I do believe it makes a powerful impact in many people's lives. And the reality is, for many of them, they take steps like George. We didn't have to go to George and say, George, now that you have a farming business, what else does your village need? We never had to say that. He figured that out on his own. And he said, wow, we don't have a school and we don't have a medical clinic. And so then it began. Now we had a new problem. Okay, how do we start a school, and how do we start a medical clinic, and how do we make them self-supporting?
Isn't it true, Tim, that I'm sorry, I was saying, isn't it true that every solution brings a new challenge?
A whole new set of problems, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure Nicole knows this as well. Is every time you try to bring a solution, you get a whole new list of problems that have to be solved. My partner in this work, Dr. John Morgan, he has a phrase. He says, "All work is problem solving."
Yeah.
And so just approach it that way, and instead of seeing that as abnormal, it normalizes the situation that, well, it's just normal. That's what we do. We're continually working to solve problems. Yeah. Hey, let's solve some problems that really matter. Wouldn't that be awesome? And what we found is there are always groups of people that have a readiness level to respond to the teaching and the training and the encouragement, and they're ready to begin to take steps. And some take small steps, some take bigger steps, but they're all ready to take some steps forward. And that makes me very, it's always shocking to me a little bit that people actually listen to us, right? And they actually begin to take some steps forward. And I'm most of the work I do right now is actually in the Philippines. And so it's the same thing. Seeing people take steps forward, maybe it means they have to get some new levels of education. Maybe they have to develop some new skills. Maybe they have to team up with some other people and collaborate on some work. Yeah. I love what you're doing here, Regina, because without collaboration, we're not going to accomplish much.
Yeah.
But in that dynamic, they're coming together and they're beginning to think about the solution. So all of a sudden, instead of just being problem focused, they're becoming solution focused step by step. And they're working together to try to talk about, well, what are the possible solutions to the new list of problems that we have, because we're trying to bring change.
Right. Two things that really stood out for me in what you were just talking about there. One is, so many times when we look at a problem and we see that, okay, if I solve this, this is going to happen over here. I'm going to have this other problem to do it. I think so many times people let that stop them and say, okay, I'm just not even going to bother with taking care of this because it's going to create this whole new other problem. And I don't want to have to deal with that. And so we don't move forward. But the other piece that you talked about was the starfish. And I think that's so important to our listeners to think about that. That, none of us can save the whole world, right? There are problems throughout the world. There are challenges everywhere. We can't bury our heads in the sand. We can't say, no, I can't solve it, so I'm not going to do anything. We can pick up that one starfish and throw it back in the ocean. And then maybe we can walk down the beach a little further and pick up another starfish and throw it back in the ocean. Yep. And we can continue doing that and making a difference. Nambaale, what are your thoughts on that? And you're muted still. Yeah, there you
go. Actually, when we collaborate and we be together, I think we can make a change in the society. Because as you see here, like when we are trying to empower the community through different programs like scaling, agribusiness, financial literacy, and a part of reproductive health among women and young girls. So if we collaborate together, we can make there and then an impact to these lives. Uh, you know, once actually no one can achieve the goal when he's alone. So
No.
there is always that idea where someone has to join hands, because collaboration in this generation is the way to go. If organizations and businesses want to achieve their goals and objectives in a minimum time, it can be achieved. So uh, so collaborations advances the potential to direct beneficiaries, uh, investors, and partners as well. Uh, because it involves of collaborating with the different people. Organization has enabled our initiative. So collaborating with, let me say, collaborating with different organizations, different individuals, helped our initiative to secure public awareness for our activities. So on that, that's what I can say. Because for any company which is collaborating with the other, uh, it is our duty to see that it gets uh, what is expected from what they have done.
Yes.
Awesome. Fantastic. I want to share for just a moment. Our other two gentlemen were not able to join us for whatever reason this morning. Um, but I just want to share a little bit about what they are doing as well. And we'll have them on another show. But I just want to, because partly I want to share because one of them has a big event coming up on Saturday. He is in Nigeria, Ogbakwu Magnus, and he is a philosopher. But he works with youth a lot, and particularly, those who are like in maybe in I don't know what grade levels, but they're in school. They're young adults, maybe. Let's call them young adults. And he has a conference that he's putting on this weekend. He's done this multiple times, but it's this weekend, and I think there's supposed to be about 500 young people there.
Wow.
I get the wonderful opportunity of being a keynote speaker at that conference, and so this will be my second time speaking in Nigeria remotely.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah, I spoke at a women's conference last year that he helped put together,
Yes.
and that was really awesome. And so I'm excited to see this conference come together for him this weekend. And he's just doing a lot of really great work in Nigeria in helping young people there. And the other one is John Ssentamu, and John is let's see, Masala, is that the name that I told? Masaka? I told you Nambaale. Is it Masaka? Is that the name of
It is Masaka, yeah.
Masaka? And that's actually in Uganda, correct? Or is it its own
Yeah,
country?
it is in Uganda.
It's in Uganda. So it's a few miles from where you are, right? But John
Yeah.
has a school there. And again, we know that education is so difficult in this part of the world, and particularly for young girls. And so John has a school there, and great work that he's doing with the youth as well. And so I just want to mention them. I don't know why they weren't able to join us this morning, but I'll put together another show for them so that we can showcase what they're doing as well. Because again, it's work that needs attention, that the world needs to know more about, and we really ask those of you who are listening to us today, and when we do that show, that you might find it in your hearts to support these projects that are so vital to these communities and the growth of the individuals in the community and their ability to participate in life, and all of the aspects of that, and to be a part. We are a global society now. We're not just a nation. We're a global society, and right now more than at any other time in the history of this world, we are able to reach beyond our own borders and help people in ways we've never been able to know about situations we've never known about before, like these young girls that Nambaale is trying to help in his community, the women. We wouldn't know about those situations if it weren't for people like Nambaale bringing attention to it, trying to do something about it, creating an initiative as he's done to really make an impact to help them rise above their circumstances, to save lives, as he mentioned. A lot of times, suicide, or we know that when abortions take place, lives are lost, both that unborn infant as well as frequently the mother. So the work that's being done here by these men and the people that they work with is so important. And I encourage you, if you have the time, the means to support in any way, that you consider what you can do. And with that, I'm going to ask each of them to share how people can help, what kind of help they're looking for, what if it's financial, if it's something else, and how you can reach out to them, how you can provide that support, and how you can contact them. So, Nambaale, let's start with you. Would you share a bit again about how people can help? What kind of support do you need from others to make this initiative work?
Thank you for that. Actually, in January, we have a project that we want to implement in Ssentamu sub-county, aimed at skilling communities and reproductive health advocacy. So basically, our budget is not yet funded. So anyone there who would like to join our cause, to partner with us, sponsor this project, can reach us through the contact that I'm going to share. Because now, when you see here that if actually the more time, let me say that when I realized this problem, when you delay to solve it, actually it also influences another generation. Because the reason that's why that we embarked on first of all empowering women, because what I know that if you empower a woman, also the children's future is safe. So if you delay to do that, uh, that is also another problem ahead. So basically, as I told you, that anyone who can join our course can support us with the funding, partnerships, and even sponsorships for different activities. Because different actually we need funding in for different activities, because now let me say like skilling, we need skilling in different segments like tailoring, we need like carpentry, we need hairdressing. So once we address the here, and we buy some equipment like sewing machines, so you may be there out there and willing, let me say that you can say that I will contribute, we are ready to receive it, and it will be full of accountability, because for any funding that you provide us will be fully accountable, uh, to see that it reaches the direct beneficiaries.
So one of the things that you're teaching them are skills so that they can continue to support themselves. And I know in your initiative that there's also an element of teaching them savings and how to
Yes, yes.
how to continue to support themselves and to use savings to help build their future.
Actually, yes. So, because what we are expecting that once we skill them, we give them CD capital, then they invest it in these village savings and loans associations. So they can come up and save within, and then they borrow again on at a low interest, such that they can make their business sustainable.
Awesome. So you're teaching them financial responsibility as
Financially,
well as the skills to get a job. So again,
yes.
similar to what Tim is doing, and really empowering them. Awesome. So what I'm going to ask you to do, Nambaale, is in the comments area, would you put your contact information where people can reach you? If you both do that, and then people can see that in the comments now or later. Awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
Nambaale.
Okay.
And so what you had said also, just to recap, was that financial is the best. Is that the best resource that you need right now? Is dollars to fund the program, or money? May not be dollars, might be
Yes.
some other currency, but money to fund the program is what you need the most of at the moment.
It can be
Awesome.
dollars, so Ugandan shillings. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, so yeah, if you'll put your contact information into there. There we go. And then Tim, would you put it in the? Can you see the comment section itself?
No.
Okay, I'll move it then. I will put it in there. Okay.
Oh, right here. Okay.
Can you see that? The one that just says comments, and that way everybody on the outside can see it as well. And then, okay, so let's see. Here, I got it, Tim.
Okay.
And I'll grab Nambaale's as
go.
well. And put that in the comments. All right. So, Tim, would you do that same thing then, please, and share with us how people can support you? You know, what would be the best thing that they could do at this time to support your endeavors?
Yeah. The number one thing I would encourage is to go to our website, which is peopleprosper.org. The name of the organization is People Prosper International. And on our website, you can see free resources that are available, both in an e-version of our workbook that we teach called Create, Own, Grow. There's a sample copy of that there. There's also a way to contact us, and I'd be happy to talk with people about projects that they're interested in. But they can learn a lot about what we're doing there. They can see pictures and see some of the projects. And also there is a course on there. It's a free course that has 4 master class series of 6 classes each on economic empowerment. And anyone can just go on there. And it's Dr. Morgan and I are doing those together. It's a lot like this, where we're talking together about economic empowerment, but we broke it down to give an overview of the categories that we really cover in our training program. And so
Awesome.
anyone can access those, and they're only in English. Sorry about that, but if you have access to English, which you do, then I would encourage Nambaale, please go there and share it with anyone you want. The courses are a great introduction into the Create, Own, Grow process of economic empowerment. And I've sent you, Regina, a PDF copy of our workbook.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I would share that with anyone who wants to begin processing that journey. So it talks about what we're doing and how to support it. But just know that when you're involved with this kind of work, just look for ways that you can go. If you're in business, most of our supporters are business people, and they really understand that their business has a really powerful role, obviously, in economic empowerment. We call business the engine of prosperity. And so we start with creating value, but in the end, at some point, businesses have to grow and be developed. And education happens and many other things need to happen as well, but business has to take place at some level. And so once there's we really want to see that happen. And that's a big part of the work that we do. And so in the beginning, you're learning about creating value. In many parts of the world, they don't think that property ownership is really possible for them, which is not true. It's absolutely possible. And it's a critical component in the world, in this world. There's another organization I would recommend people get some familiarity with called the Acton Institute. ACTON, the Acton Institute, is a global think tank of people who are doing very serious work about economic empowerment around the world. And their website is filled with resources that you can use to educate yourself on what's working, what's not working, and what's really going to bring about changes in high poverty parts of the world. And
Awesome.
I think the work that they're doing is incredible. In fact, their work is really part of what inspired us to say, okay, we can focus on this education and implementation in these other areas as well. And so we see ourselves coming in not just as a think tank, but coming in to work with people and to bring education at their level and to create ways for them to do implementation in their communities, just like George did in his community.
Right.
He's one example of many that I could share, but where they come in and just say, what does our community need, and how can I help? And education is the common denominator, I would say, for everything that we're doing that empowers, right? And Naval knows this. There has to be, and it can be formal education or informal, but there has to be levels of education involved.
Agreed.
The other thing that can be done is these kind of online Zoom type trainings are a good way to introduce concepts in different parts of the world. And so many times that's really the first entry point, is to begin to say, hey, let's present some teaching. Let's do it online for those that have access. And then they can decide from there, is it helpful? And if it's helpful, what would be some next steps?
Excellent. And thank you for those resources, Tim. Thank you very much. Thank you both for being here today and sharing the amazing work that you're doing. And folks, you have the opportunity today to do far more than pick up a starfish and throw it back in the ocean. As important as that is, you have the opportunity to save lives, to give people hope and a future by getting involved with programs like these. I highly recommend these two, as well as the other two that I mentioned. These men are doing such good work in the world and making a difference in lives, and you can contribute to that and help them to make a bigger difference, to save more lives, to create more productive lives, to create opportunities for people to have hope and to be able to see and create a future for themselves. So I strongly encourage you, if this is not for you, if you can't help, you may know somebody who can. Please share the video to this, the link to this video with someone else who might be able to help in some way. These folks desperately need our assistance. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you again to Tim and Nambaale. Thank you to all of our listeners. And we'll see you next time on Collaboration Conversations. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.